You ever notice how the people who feel the deepest often say the least? How the person who acts distant, guarded, hard to read, somehow keeps finding their way back to you? Listen carefully, because this could change the way you see love forever. Sometimes the loudest declaration of love does not come through words. Sometimes it comes through hesitation, through vulnerability hidden behind silence, through someone fighting their own fear just to stay connected to you. And if an avoidant acts right like this, they're already in love with you. Most people misunderstand avoidant individuals. They think distance means indifference. They think silence means a lack of feeling. But often, the opposite is true. The avoidant heart is not empty, it is overwhelmed. It is a soul that learns somewhere along the journey that closeness can lead to pain. That dependency can lead to disappointment. That vulnerability can become danger. So they build walls not because they don't care, but because they care so deeply they fear losing control of their emotions. And here's the truth about human behavior. People move toward what feels safe. If someone who normally avoids emotional intimacy keeps moving toward you, then you may start to feel a sense of comfort and security in their presence. Keeps returning to you, keeps opening tiny doors into their world. You are no longer just a person in their life. You have become a place of emotional significance. Understand this principle. Love is not always expressed in comfort. Sometimes love is expressed in struggle. Sometimes the greatest sign of love is not effortless affection, but the willingness to fight internal fear just to remain connected. When an avoidant begins sharing personal details they normally hide from the world, pay attention. That is sacred territory. They may not say, "I'm deeply in love with you." But when they reveal their insecurities, their past wounds, their private thoughts, they are offering you something far more valuable than polished words. They are offering trust. And trust is the language of the guarded heart. You see, emotionally avoidant people survive by controlling exposure. They reveal only what feels safe. So when they begin allowing you to see behind the curtain, that is not casual. That is emotional risk. That is their soul testing whether love can exist without destruction. And another sign, they may pull away for a moment, but they always come back. Why? Because your presence has become emotionally magnetic to them. Even when fear tells them to run, connection pulls them back in. They may need space to regulate their emotions, but distance never truly disconnects them from you. The heart always returns to what matters. Now listen carefully, because this is powerful. Avoidant people often love through action before they love through language. They may not write poetic messages. They may not constantly verbalize affection, but watch what they do. Do they show up when you need help? Do they remember small details about your life? Do they protect your feelings in subtle ways? Do they quietly prioritize your happiness? Actions reveal emotional truth long before words catch up. Human beings are conditioned to expect loud demonstrations of love, but some of the deepest love exists in consistency, in silent loyalty, in emotional effort that nobody else notices. And here's something most people never understand. When an avoidant starts imagining a future with you, even casually, even indirectly, that is monumental. Someone who fears emotional dependency, does not naturally build permanent visions with others. So when they include you in future conversations, future plans, future dreams, their heart is already attaching itself to your existence.
Why?
Because love changes priorities. Love shifts identity. Love begins to whisper, maybe this person is worth the risk. That's what love truly is. Not the absence of fear, but the decision that someone matters more than the fear. Too many people sabotage these relationships because they demand instant, emotional perfection. But growth does not happen through pressure. It happens through safety. A guarded soul blooms slowly. You cannot force a flower open without destroying it. Real transformation occurs when someone feels emotionally accepted enough to lower their armor naturally. And this applies to every human relationship. People heal in environments where they do not feel judged for their wounds. The strongest relationships are not built by two perfect people. They are built by two people, right? Willing to understand each other deeply enough to grow. If someone avoidant is making effort, becoming more emotionally available little by little, staying connected despite their fears, then you are witnessing something extraordinary. You are witnessing courage in emotional form. Because for an avoidant person, love is not casual. Love feels life-altering. It shakes the foundations of the identity they built to protect themselves. Every vulnerable moment feels like standing unarmed in a battlefield, and yet they stay, and yet they try, and yet they slowly open their heart to you. That is love. Never underestimate the power of patience combined with emotional wisdom. Some people need reassurance that love is not a trap. That connection does not mean losing themselves. That intimacy can feel peaceful instead of painful. And when they finally realize that with you, when your presence becomes associated with peace instead of pressure, something miraculous happens. The walls begin to fall. The conversations deepen. The distance shortens. The emotional availability increases. Not because you forced them, but because love finally felt safer than fear. That is the breakthrough every human soul is searching for. At the deepest spiritual level, love was never meant to imprison people, it was meant to free them. Real love awakens the parts of us that fear tried to bury. Real love teaches the nervous system safety. Real love reminds wounded hearts that connection can become healing, instead of harm. So if an avoidant acts like this, if they keep choosing you despite their fears, if they let you see pieces of their hidden world, if they quietly build a life around your presence, they are not confused about you. Their soul has already made the decision. Their heart is simply learning how to catch up with it. One of the clearest signs an avoidant person is already in love with you is when they slowly begin inviting you into parts of themselves that almost nobody else gets to. See, for most people, opening up emotionally may feel natural, but for an avoidant individual, vulnerability can feel incredibly uncomfortable. Their entire emotional survival system is built around protecting themselves from disappointment, rejection, or emotional dependency. So when they begin sharing their inner world with you, even in subtle ways, it means something far deeper than casual interest. It means trust is beginning to overpower fear. An avoidant person usually keeps conversations safe and controlled. They prefer logic over emotion, independence over attachment, and distance over emotional exposure. They often appear calm on the outside because they've trained themselves to hide what's happening internally. But when love enters their life, something begins to shift. The walls they spent years building start developing small openings. They may not suddenly become emotionally expressive overnight, but they start revealing pieces of themselves in ways that are meaningful if you know what to look for. It may begin with small details. They tell you about a difficult childhood memory. They admit something they are insecure about. They share fears they normally keep hidden. Maybe they open up about past heartbreak, family struggles, or moments when they felt deeply alone. These conversations might seem ordinary to someone emotionally open, but for an avoidant person, these moments require enormous courage. Every personal revelation feels like emotional risk. Every vulnerable sentence challenges the protective identity they created to survive. What makes this even more powerful is that avoidant individuals do not open up to everyone. They are extremely selective about emotional exposure because vulnerability makes them feel emotionally unsafe. If they are choosing to reveal hidden parts of themselves to you, it means your presence has started to feel emotionally secure. And emotional safety is one of the rarest and most valuable experiences an avoidant person can feel, sometimes their vulnerability will not look dramatic or obvious. They may not sit down and pour their heart out in one emotional conversation. Instead, it happens gradually. A comment here, a confession there, a deeper conversation late at night. Tiny emotional breadcrumbs that slowly lead you closer to the center of who they really are. This gradual opening is important because it reflects their internal battle between fear and connection. Part of them wants to retreat and stay tight, guarded, but another part longs to be fully seen and accepted. You'll also notice that when avoidant people trust you emotionally, they begin relaxing around you in ways they don't around others. They stop performing strength all the time. They become less emotionally defensive. Their guard drops in quiet moments. Maybe they let you see them stressed, overwhelmed, uncertain, or emotionally vulnerable instead of pretending they have everything under control. That shift is significant because avoidant individuals are deeply uncomfortable appearing emotionally needy or dependent. Allowing you to witness their imperfect emotions means they no longer see you as a threat to their independence. Another important thing to understand is that avoidant people often communicate love indirectly. They may struggle to say emotional words openly because deep feelings activate fear inside them, but vulnerability itself becomes their love language. Sharing hidden emotions, private thoughts, and personal memories becomes their way of saying, "You matter enough for me to lower my defenses." That is not something they do lightly. The deeper truth is this: people only reveal their authentic selves where they feel emotionally safe. An avoidant person spends much of life protecting themselves from emotional exposure, so when they voluntarily begin showing you their real thoughts, wounds, fears, and dreams, it means your connection has become emotionally meaningful. Love is beginning to replace survival mode, and perhaps the most beautiful part of this transformation is that it is not forced. Real emotional opening cannot be demanded, pressured, or manipulated. It happens naturally when someone feels accepted instead of judged. When an avoidant person realizes they can be vulnerable with you without losing themselves, something powerful changes inside them. Their heart slowly stops seeing connection as danger and starts seeing it as home. One of the most misunderstood behaviors of an avoidant person is their tendency to create distance when emotions become intense. Many people immediately assume this means they do not care, but often the truth is much deeper. When an avoidant person truly loves someone, emotional closeness can actually overwhelm them. Love activates fears they have spent years suppressing: fear of losing control, fear of dependency, fear of rejection, and fear of being emotionally consumed. So instead of moving closer in the way most people expect, sometimes pull away temporarily to regain emotional balance. But here is the important difference. Even after distancing themselves, they always find their way back to you. That pattern matters more than most people realize. Anyone can stay close during easy moments, but when someone repeatedly returns after emotional discomfort, it reveals emotional attachment that runs far deeper than surface attraction. Avoidant individuals value independence heavily. They are wired to escape situations that make them feel emotionally vulnerable or pressured. So if they continue reconnecting with you despite their instinct to withdraw, it means your presence has become emotionally significant to them in a way they cannot easily ignore. Their distancing is usually not about a lack of feelings. In many cases, it is actually the intensity of their feelings that causes them to retreat. Love creates emotional exposure, and emotional exposure feels unfamiliar and risky to an avoidant heart. They may suddenly need space after a deep conversation, after a moment of closeness, or after realizing how attached they are becoming. To the outside world, this behavior can appear confusing. One moment they seem deeply connected, and the next moment they become quiet, distracted, or distant. But internally, they are often trying to process emotions they were never taught how to handle comfortably. What separates genuine emotional attachment from disinterest is what happens after the distance. If they consistently reappear, reconnect, check on you, or continue maintaining the relationship despite their discomfort, their heart is already invested. They may not know how to sustain constant emotional closeness yet, but they cannot fully detach either because the emotional bond matters too much. You also have to understand that avoidant individuals often fight an internal war between desire and fear. Part of them craves intimacy, connection, and love just like everyone else. Another part fears the vulnerability that comes with needing someone emotionally. This creates push and pull behavior that can feel confusing unless you recognize the emotional psychology behind it. Their instinct says, protect yourself, while their heart says, stay connected. When they keep returning to you, it means the connection is stronger than the fear. Another powerful sign is that even during periods of distance, you remain emotionally present in their life. They may not communicate constantly, They still think about you, monitor your emotional state, or find subtle ways to stay connected. Avoidant people rarely maintain emotional ties with people who do not deeply matter to them. If they continue investing energy into the relationship despite moments of withdrawal, that connection has already taken root inside them. This behavior also reflects trust developing slowly over time. For an avoidant person, emotional consistency does not happen instantly because closeness feels unfamiliar, But every time they pull away and return, they are unconsciously testing something important. Is this relationship still safe when I'm imperfect? Will this person still accept me when I struggle emotionally? Each successful return teaches them that love does not automatically lead to abandonment or emotional suffocation. Patience becomes incredibly important in these dynamics. Not patience that tolerates disrespect or emotional games, but patience rooted in emotional understanding. Avoidant, Individuals are often learning how to stay emotionally connected while fighting instincts that tell them to isolate. Their return is their effort. Their reconnection is their vulnerability. Their continued presence is emotional investment. And over time, something powerful begins to happen. The more emotionally safe the relationship feels, the shorter the distance becomes. The fear slowly loses power. They begin staying emotionally present longer because their nervous system starts associating love with peace instead of danger. What once triggered retreat gradually becomes a source of comfort. That is why an avoidant person consistently returning to you is not a small thing. It is not random behavior. It is the heart choosing connection again and again, even while fear whispers to run. One of the strongest signs that an avoidant person is already in love with you is when they begin including you in their future, even in small and subtle ways. This may not seem dramatic at first, For someone who values emotional independence above almost everything else, thinking long-term with another person represents a massive emotional shift. Avoidant individuals are naturally cautious about attachment because attachment creates vulnerability. The more someone matters to them, the greater the emotional risk feels. That is why future planning is such a powerful indicator of love for them. It means they are no longer seeing you as temporary. Somewhere deep inside, they have started, imagining life with you as part of their emotional reality. Avoidant people often live emotionally in the present because focusing too heavily on the future with someone can make them feel trapped, dependent, or emotionally exposed. They prefer flexibility, emotional control, and the ability to retreat if necessary. So when they begin talking about future experiences involving you, it signals that their fear of closeness is slowly being replaced by emotional investment. They may not even realize how revealing this behavior is, but emotionally, it says everything. Sometimes it begins casually. They mention places the two of you should visit together someday. They talk about future holidays, future memories, or future goals with you naturally included in the picture. Maybe they ask questions about your long-term dreams, your career plans, or where you see yourself years from now. These conversations matter because avoidant individuals do not emotionally plan around people they are unsure about. If they are mentally making room for you in their future, it means you have already become emotionally important. What makes this especially meaningful is that avoidant people are often careful not to create expectations they cannot emotionally handle. They dislike feeling pressured or emotionally obligated, so if they voluntarily begin building future scenarios with you, they are unconsciously moving beyond self-protection. Their heart is beginning to trust the connection enough to imagine permanence instead of escape. You will also notice that their decisions slowly begin considering you. This is another subtle but powerful sign. An avoidant person who is emotionally detached tends to operate entirely around personal independence. But when love develops, your feelings, needs, and presence begin influencing their choices. They may adjust schedules to spend time with you, think about how certain decisions affect the relationship, or prioritize stability in ways they never did before. Love changes perspective. It transforms me into we, even for someone who once resisted emotional dependence. Another important thing to understand is that avoidant people often express commitment through consistency rather than emotional speeches. They may not constantly say romantic things, but their actions reveal long-term thinking. They continue showing up. They continue investing energy. They continue maintaining the bond over time. This quiet consistency becomes their version of emotional commitment because actions feel safer to them than dramatic emotional declarations. And beneath all of this is something even deeper. Future planning requires emotional trust. When an avoidant person imagines you in their future, they are emotionally gambling on the idea that closeness with you will not destroy their sense of self. That is a huge internal breakthrough. Many avoidant individuals secretly fear losing their freedom, identity, or emotional safety inside relationships. So choosing to emotionally attach to someone long-term means they are beginning to believe love with you can coexist with safety instead of threatening it. You may also notice moments where they become protective of the relationship itself. They start caring about stability, communication, and emotional security because the connection now feels valuable enough to preserve. This is significant because avoidant individuals typically detach from situations that feel emotionally risky, or uncertain. If they are actively trying to maintain a future with you despite their fears, it means their emotional investment has become real. The beautiful thing about this transformation is that it usually happens quietly. Avoidant love is rarely loud at first. It grows in hidden ways. It reveals itself through presence, effort, planning, and emotional consistency. The future becomes the language their heart speaks before their mouth fully learns how to express it. And when someone who once feared attachment starts building tomorrow with you in mind, that is not casual affection. That is the soul slowly deciding that love may finally be worth the risk. One of the deepest truths about avoidant individuals is that they often express love through actions long before they express it through words. Many people misunderstand this because society teaches us to associate love primarily with verbal affection, emotional openness, and constant reassurance. But avoidant people frequently experience emotions so intensely that speaking about them directly feels uncomfortable or overwhelming. Instead of saying everything they feel, they show it in the way they behave, the way they protect, the way they remain present, and the way they quietly invest in the people who matter to them. An avoidant person may struggle to say, "I need you, I miss you," or even "I love you" consistently because emotional vulnerability activates fear inside them. Deep emotional expression can make them feel exposed, dependent, or emotionally unsafe. But while their words may be limited, their actions often reveal what their heart is trying to communicate. If you pay attention closely, you will notice that their love is hidden inside consistency, effort, loyalty, and subtle care. One of the clearest examples is reliability. When an avoidant person truly loves someone, they show up, maybe not perfectly every single moment, but consistently enough that their presence becomes dependable. They help right when you are struggling. They check in during difficult moments. They remember things that matter to you. They pay attention to details other people overlook. These behaviors may seem small on the surface, but emotionally they are significant because avoidant individuals do not naturally invest their energy deeply unless someone genuinely matters to them. Another powerful sign is protectiveness. Avoidant people may not always know how to verbally comfort emotions, but they often show love by trying to protect the person they care about from pain, stress, or harm. They may quietly solve problems for you, support your goals, or step in during moments of difficulty without making a big display of it. Their instinct becomes, how can I make this person's life easier? That protective energy is often one of the purest forms of their love because it comes directly from emotional attachment. You'll also notice that avoidant individuals communicate affection through practical acts of care. They may do thoughtful things without announcing them. They might remember your routines, bring you something you mentioned casually weeks ago, or help you with responsibilities without being asked. These gestures are rarely random. They are emotional expressions disguised as action because action feels safer to them than emotional exposure. And perhaps one of the most important things to understand is that avoidant people value freedom and independence intensely.
So when they consistently
choose to give their time, attention, and energy to you, that choice carries emotional weight. Time is sacred to them because emotional investment does not come easily. If they repeatedly prioritize you in quiet ways, it means their heart has already formed attachment, even if their words have not fully caught up. Another subtle sign of love through action is emotional presence during important moments. Avoidant people may not always know how to handle emotional conversations perfectly, but when they care deeply, they often stay physically or practically present during your hardest times. They may not have the perfect comforting words, but they remain there. That matters. Presence is one of the strongest demonstrations of emotional commitment because it shows they are willing to move through discomfort instead of escaping it. Avoidant individuals also tend to reveal love through loyalty. They are not usually people who emotionally invest in many others at a deep level. So when they stay committed, when they continue returning, when they consistently make room for you in their life, that loyalty reflects serious emotional attachment. They may not constantly speak about forever, but their continued effort quietly communicates it. The challenge is that many people overlook these forms of love because they are expecting dramatic emotional expression instead. They wait for grand speeches while missing the devotion hidden inside daily behavior. But mature love is not only found in words, it is found in sacrifice, consistency, attentiveness, and effort. It is found in someone choosing you repeatedly, even when emotional expression feels difficult for them. And for an avoidant person, actions are often safer because actions feel controllable. Words expose vulnerability immediately, but consistent behavior allows them to love while still protecting parts of themselves emotionally. Over time, as trust deepens and emotional safety grows, their words may begin matching their actions more openly. But long before that happens, their behavior already tells the story. Because when an avoidant person quietly protects your peace, supports your growth, remains loyal through difficulty, and continues investing in your happiness, they are not simply interested in you. They are loving you in the language that feels most natural to their guarded heart. One of the most powerful signs that an avoidant person is already in love with you is when their emotional walls slowly begin to come down. This transformation does not usually happen dramatically or all at once. In fact, it often happens so quietly that many people miss it completely. But for an avoidant individual, lowering emotional defenses is one of the greatest acts of vulnerability they can offer another human being. Their walls were not built overnight. They were created through disappointment, emotional pain, fear of rejection, or experiences that taught them closeness could become dangerous. Those walls, right, became protection, survival, and identity all at once. So when someone begins lowering them for you, it means your presence has started feeling safer than their fear. Avoidant people are experts at emotional self-protection. They know how to stay guarded, independent, and emotionally controlled. They avoid situations where they might feel too exposed or emotionally dependent because vulnerability often feels unsafe to them. Even when they deeply care about someone, their first instinct may still be to hide emotions, minimize attachment, or create emotional distance. But love has a way of challenging even the strongest defenses. The heart naturally desires connection, no matter how much fear exists around it. At first, the changes may seem subtle. They begin texting more consistently. They start sharing more of their thoughts without being asked. Their tone softens. Their emotional reactions become less defensive. They begin allowing longer conversations, deeper emotional moments, and more intimacy into the relationship. These small shifts are actually enormous internal breakthroughs because every step toward openness requires them to move beyond their emotional comfort zone. One of the clearest signs their walls are lowering is emotional availability. An avoidant person who once avoided difficult conversations may begin staying in relationships or friendships, present during emotional discussions instead of immediately shutting down or disappearing. They may still struggle at times, but the difference is that they try. That effort matters deeply. It shows they are beginning to value connection more than emotional escape. You'll also notice they start allowing themselves to be seen more authentically. They stop trying to appear emotionally invulnerable all the time. They let you witness moments of stress, sadness, uncertainty, or emotional need. For most people, this may seem normal, but for an avoidant person, being emotionally exposed can feel terrifying. They often fear being judged, rejected, or losing control if someone sees their deeper emotions. So when they stop hiding every vulnerable part of themselves from you, it means trust is taking root. Another important shift is that they become more emotionally responsive to your needs and feelings. Avoidant individuals often learn to disconnect from emotions as a coping mechanism, including their own. But when they are in love and beginning to feel emotionally safe, empathy starts flowing more naturally. They become more attentive to your emotional world. They care more deeply about how their actions affect you. They may still struggle to express emotions perfectly, but their willingness to emotionally engage increases over time. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this process is that it happens because of emotional safety, not pressure. You cannot force an avoidant person to lower their walls through demands, guilt, or constant emotional intensity. In fact, pressure usually causes them to retreat further. Real openness happens when they feel accepted instead of controlled, when they realize they can be imperfect, vulnerable, and emotionally human without losing themselves. Their nervous system slowly begins relaxing around love. This is why patience and emotional consistency are so transformative in these relationships. Every safe interaction teaches them something new. Closeness does not always lead to pain. Vulnerability does not automatically result in rejection. Love can feel peaceful instead of overwhelming. Over time, these experiences begin reshaping the emotional patterns they carried for years. The walls start becoming unnecessary because your presence no longer feels emotionally threatening. Instead of feeling trapped, they begin feeling understood. Instead of feeling pressured, they begin feeling supported. And when an avoidant person reaches the point where they willingly let you into the parts of themselves they once protected from everyone else, that is not casual attachment anymore. That is emotional surrender in its purest form. Because for someone who spent their whole life surviving behind emotional armor, choosing to lower those defenses for you means their heart has already decided you are worth the risk. So if you ever find yourself questioning whether an avoidant person truly loves you, stop looking only for perfect words and dramatic emotional displays.
Look deeper.
Look at the effort, the consistency, the quiet vulnerability, the way they slowly let you right into a world they normally protect from everyone else. Love is not always loud. Sometimes it whispers through actions, patience, trust, and emotional courage. And when someone who fears closeness still chooses connection with you again and again, that is one of the most powerful forms of love a human being can offer. Real love does not erase fear overnight, but it gives people the strength to move beyond it, one vulnerable step at a time. Thank you so much for listening and sharing this powerful moment together. I hope these words remind you that true connection is built not through perfection, but through understanding, growth, and emotional courage. Keep leading with patience, wisdom, and authenticity in every relationship you build. Until next time, stay strong, stay open, and never stop believing in the transforming power of love. Goodbye, and take care of your heart and the hearts of others.